There's a movie from 1981 that nobody talks about in it. I mean, nobody. Not because it was bad, not because it flopped, but because it was inconvenient. It's called Early Warning. Low budget Christian film circuit. Most people never saw the inside of a theater with it. The critics laughed, called it paranoid, called it propaganda. And then everything in it happened. The movie follows a woman who stumbles onto something she wasn't supposed to find, a foundation, a global foundation. And their actual stated mission, is to consolidate control of the money, the media, the governments, the people. Not through invasion, not through bombs, through systems, through infrastructure, through making themselves so embedded in the machinery of civilization that by the time anyone notices, there's nothing left to resist. She goes to a reporter. The reporter thinks she's crazy. The foundation in the film doesn't send soldiers, they send spokesmen. They don't seize assets, they acquire them. They don't silence critics with violence. They make criticism look crazy. They buy the platforms, seat their people in the agencies, and then wait patiently because they know something the public doesn't. The public has a short memory, and they have a very long plan. Now let me tell you where we are today, April 2026. A little over a year ago, something called the Department of Government Efficiency walked into the federal government, unelected, unconfirmed, accountable to nobody, and began systematically dismantling agencies that existed to protect you. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the agency that stood between you and predatory banks, gutted. USAID, gone. The Department of Education, restructured into irrelevance. The Social Security Administration, hollowed out from the inside while DOGE staffers access and copy data from government databases, including Social Security information on over 300 million Americans, transferred to a non-Social Security server that is now inaccessible to the agency itself, while a federal court order was in place barring that access. Let me say that again. A court said stop. They kept going. And the data of 300 million Americans is now on a server that the government can't access. In Early Warning, the Foundation's power is never formal. They don't need a title. They need access. And once they have access, the institution is already theirs, whether it knows it or not. Now here's where it gets specific. The man who led this operation owned satellites, a social media platform, an AI company, a rocket company, and as of February 2026 merged SpaceX with his artificial intelligence company xAI in the largest private corporate combination in history, valued at $1.25 trillion. He sat in the front row of a presidential inauguration, not as a guest, as an architect. And while his team was inside the government cutting the budgets of agencies that regulate his businesses, his companies were simultaneously positioning themselves to receive billions in new federal contracts. The FAA, which his people were cutting staff from, signed a Starlink contract. The broadband program worth $42 billion. Rules quietly rewritten to let his satellite company in. The agency that regulates his rockets, short-staffed by his own efficiency operation. The movie's villain doesn't have a villain's face. He has a philanthropist's face. He has an efficiency face. He has a save the taxpayers' money face. Does that sound like anyone you've seen on the stage lately? Now, DOGE itself, they say, is dismantled. The headline dropped a few months ago. DOGE no longer exists as a centralized entity. The administration's own personnel chief said it. Case closed. Except, federal employees told Fortune it was not apparent to them that DOGE had been disbanded. And IRS employees said DOGE became a shell company, as more and more operatives became tangled in the oversight of individual agencies. It's like taking the dust jacket off of the book and saying, we've got rid of the book. The administration's own personnel chief, while announcing DOGE was gone, said, the principle of DOGE remain alive and well. That's not a shutdown. That's an absorption. In Early Warning, the Foundation doesn't need a headquarters. It doesn't need a name on a building. Once it's inside the infrastructure, it is the infrastructure. You can't point to it. You can't protest against it. You can't vote it out because it doesn't exist on paper anymore. It just runs things. By January 2026, two Doge members were accused by the Department of Justice of conspiring with groups seeking to overturn election results. The scheme allegedly hinged on their access to Social Security data, which could be used to match state voter rolls. They didn't need tanks for that either. They just needed a badge and a database. The film specifically targets information. Control what people know, and you control what people do. In 1981, that meant newspapers and television. In 2026, that means the algorithm on the platform the architect owns. It means search results. It means what gets amplified and what gets buried. It means what gets labeled misinformation and what gets a check mark. And now, that same man is preparing a public stock offering, a dual class share structure designed to let the public buy in while he retains voting control, for a combined entity that includes the rockets, the satellites, the AI, and the social media platform. All one structure. One structure that controls how you get online, what you see when you do, the AI that answers your questions, the satellites above your head, and a direct line into the federal government's most sensitive data systems. They showed us the blueprint in 1981. We called it fiction. At the end of early warning, somebody finally has the proof. Real, documented proof of everything the foundation is doing. And you know what happens? Doesn't matter. Because by the time they have the proof, the institutions that would act on it are already compromised. The people who would publish it are already bought. The audience that would be outraged by it has already been conditioned to disbelieve it. A year after this began, the people whose lives were destroyed are still asking the same question. Nobody was prepared for the complete destruction? And for what? The warning came in 1981. We called it propaganda. They called it a plan. This isn't a movie review. This is the mirror. Watch the pattern. And this is Keith, and Keith Speaks.